Bring back manly men. Who would have thought that that would have caused an absolute firestorm?
And a lot of these average young men growing up today think they have to be feminine.
And my goal is just spread this red pill knowledge, help men go their own way, become alpha.
This progressive left is, I mean, they're nothing more than Marxists.
Women do not find men in dresses to be attractive. I would never allow my kids near a man that's wearing a dress. That's my personal opinion. You can call that however you want to call that. I don't need to be woke to pretend that this sort of stuff is normal.
Have you ever thought about how arbitrary the things we deem masculine are? You've probably noticed it to some extent on your trip to the local grocery store. How when you buy shampoo, it's named some abstract concepts like 3-in-1 Arctic Mist, but just one aisle over, the same products are pink and smell like strawberry. They're not Q-tips, they're a multi-tool for detailing my ears. You cannot make this stuff up. This observation is nothing new, with even the companies responsible trying to join the wave of criticism. Just 10 years ago, the gist of your average Axe body spray commercial was, "Our product will attract infinite female." But now those same companies are calling for our nation's twink army to rise up or something. These ads even feature a female narrator to put the man in his place.
Why are you touching your armpit?
I was just checking to see if it was dry.
Don't. That's weird.
But just because the attitudes of society and advertising have seemingly changed overnight doesn't mean we fixed the problem. You can't call masculinity toxic and call it a day, especially when men already feel persecuted for expressing their gender. Call them toxic one too many times and they're gonna buy a year's supply of dude wipes to own the libs. At its core, today's masculinity is a constant state of fear and preservation. You're fearful of losing your manhood, and you make hundreds of small decisions on a daily basis to preserve it, like buying Q-tips for men. It's this very reason that men aren't very receptive to being told the 1950s vision of masculinity is problematic, because they're scared of a society that's trying to take their masculinity away from them, something they work very hard to earn and preserve. I'm not just talking about other men here. I can strongly relate with the desire to be masculine, to be an alpha, whatever that means. And for a long time, I felt very persecuted and judged. I believed there was an agenda to erase masculinity from society. Even though I no longer believe these things about feminism, I still can't shake the desire to be seen as masculine. I secretly want to be seen as strong and dominant, to be taken seriously, and I feel an immense pressure to adhere to society's very restrictive view of men. There's a reason self-insert action movies are still so popular with men. From birth, we're programmed to view ourselves this way, beating up the bad guys and standing up for what's right. It's no surprise that online alpha male tutorials, often behind paywalls, are still so successful. So in this video, I want to attempt to understand men and why they cling to World War II era masculine ideals. And by extension, I want to understand myself and how I fit into this, because everything needs to be about me somehow. First, I'll be looking at the more extreme end of things, and then scaling it back to the more general concept of masculinity, sexuality, and more. Let's do some overthinking. Look, I've been trying to keep up with my alpha male tutorials, classes, books, and webinars, but I still have no idea what the f is supposed to be happening right now. Not to mention, half the time when I look up masculine tutorials on YouTube, the videos just end up being vlogs.
I get to the gas station and all I want to do is put the regular gas in the car, but I have to put that 93 stuff in there now. I just don't get it. Like, do they purposefully make lower quality gas?
Truly the greatest mind of our era. These videos are often just 10-minute long ads for their numerous products. This video alone has links for a line of watches, pre-workout mix, testosterone supplements, and clothing, all directly or indirectly sold by this guy. The videos I find that actually do give advice though, now those are something else.
Now, if you have these specific traits, not only are women and everybody who comes into your domain or your interactions going to notice that you have a certain spark, but these are also going to be traits that propel your life forward. But women, wealth, happiness, and just really the ability to play life on his own terms becomes very push button.
Okay, so I can't apologize, argue, explain, or watch porn. Got it.
Most nice guys keep their emotions bottled up. To eliminate this trait, don't bottle them up. And if something is bothering you, don't be afraid to say so.
Okay, I guess I do need to show emotion.
Now, you might not realize it, but your facial hair actually plays a huge role in how people perceive you. And that's why I recommend that every guy gets a beardscape from Brio.
And I guess I need to buy more shit too. This genre of videos has got to be the most well monetized type of content I have ever seen. All of these videos go straight to books, webinars, or classes, all of which claim to be free for a limited time only, but quickly build up a hefty price tag. But maybe it's worth it, because where else can I get masculine behavioral therapy? If I had to summarize the message of these videos, it would go something like this. In order to be masculine, you need to be conventionally attractive, physically fit, and put together. You also need to be distant, but not too distant, assertive, but not too assertive, and very confident. The goal is to be perpetually out of reach, playing hard to get and commanding others to follow your lead. You don't want to be the nice guy. But what exactly does this do for you? What is the end goal? Well, most masculine gurus will tell you this is all to attract women, with many of them providing demonstrations on how to approach them in the wild.
Hi, this is extremely random, but I think you're super cute.
Thanks.
You're welcome. What's your name?
Gabby?
Gabby. Do you have time to chat for a sec?
I have to go to office hours after, so.
30 seconds. I feel like I have to have like an elevator picture.
Wow, she looks so interested. You see, and I'm quoting here, in the alpha mindset, women are considered the sexual selectors. So despite men being the dominant ones, if you care about consent, and that's an if, you need to defer to the preferences of what women want. However, despite these alpha males obsessing about what women supposedly want, they seem very quick to jump to a whole other type of logic.
So there's cute little good girl librarians that will make you wait patiently 3 months for basic missionary, but she'll end up in bed with Chad 15 minutes after meeting him. You can be certain that she'll do everything that she said she wouldn't do with you with him, right? Never forget that women will break rules for alphas and make them for betas. So when a woman says something like, I don't do that, you need to add in your head, with me.
So it seems that being an alpha is less about what women want and more about what you can do to circumvent their defenses. And that basically boils down to being conventionally attractive and never taking no for an answer, and doing so under the guise of knowing what a woman wants more than she does herself somehow. Well, I'm sure many people find a dominant guy who goes to the gym on a daily basis attractive. The fact these people view women as a universal commodity is concerning. These videos don't reference certain types of women, just all women. And oftentimes these videos take an even darker turn, describing women as master manipulators pulling the strings of their beta partners.
But the fact of the matter is that she can never come before your purpose. The moment she does, she's going to see that she can easily manipulate you, that you're like Play-Doh, you're moldable. And when you're moldable like that, you don't have the strong, congruent, masculine, rock-solid qualities that she's actually looking for. Everything is a test, fellas, and you cannot forget that.
Notice the language here, the qualities she actually wants. They're not talking about what women say they want. They're talking about a vague abstraction of what they imagine women want. These videos are often laced with sexism, with an overlap in the incel and pickup artist communities. Soon enough, you realize they're not selling a few tips or tricks, they're selling an ideology. An ideology that tells men that women are inherently untruthful and manipulative, that if you let your guard down, they'll use you to their own selfish ends, and the way to avoid this is to become so irresistible that they drop the act. You find some cheat codes, and soon enough you have access to the master controls. Trust me, the gamer references are very important when communicating with straight men. You gotta make it a game. Calling this mindset toxic, in my opinion, is totally justified. The reason being, straight men have no real way of knowing what a woman wants outside of what she communicates. Oftentimes, these alpha male gurus will try to legitimize their actions by saying they know what women want regardless of what they say they want, because they witness those same women change their behavior around a Chad or a masculine alpha male. Let's just say these observations are true. You see a girl and she's willing to do certain things with one guy. What makes you so deserving of those same things? Why doesn't a woman deserve the freedom to be more open with one man without opening herself up to all men? That doesn't sound like manipulation or double standards. That sounds like personal preference. The thing is, men are raised with a sense of sexual entitlement to women. Oftentimes they go through these mental gymnastics, which result in them having blind spots to the preferences of other women. They can't have preferences, they must be master manipulators or be playing games just to ruin your life specifically. This logic would maybe hold up if these same men didn't have strong preferences for who they were interested in. But in other videos, these same people talk about certain types of women being objectively better than others, even though that's the exact same type of sexual ranking they hate women for supposedly doing.
Why are you telling men not to date women that have children?
Because women without children are better.
That's not true.
Why is it not true?
Just imagine for a second if in society women were supposed to be the dominant alphas. Wouldn't it be weird to claim men are master manipulators because they won't fast track every girl they see into their bedroom? If you try to think of women as being the same species capable of having preferences, this logic begins to fall apart. Thankfully, this is as bad as it gets for the majority of people who go down this path. However, some people decide to take the black pill. Taking the black pill is a term coined by the incel community to describe a group of people who see society as fundamentally broken, with themselves not fitting into that society. And while this video isn't about incels, I think this can apply to a growing pool of young men who feel they weren't given a society that fits them. And why would they? We raise young boys like they're going to be America's next top war criminal, only for them to get out into the real world and work a dead-end job for 40 years. They receive rejection from any girl they take interest in because they have no idea how to connect with other people, which is likely because they're raised to be stoic and inaccessible. And it's not like men often come to this conclusion either, because part of the male identity is to be blindly confident, to find no fault in yourself. Instead, men can notice when they're unhappy, but look outward for the cause, usually arriving at women. This is why stories of false rape accusations are routinely blasted across the internet every other month. It makes things far more simple if you can blame the woke mob instead of your internalized childhood teachings from a broken society. Instead of policing your body language, pressuring girls in public, and developing body dysmorphia at the gym like a real alpha, people who take the black pill decide to lie down and rot because suffering is inevitable. Ultimately, they're born too late into a world that calls them toxic, with the only remnants of a life they want existing in history textbooks. Everyone, is it gay to have a wife and children? One of my favorite Twitter accounts of all time has to be Rivlino, or however you pronounce it. You may recognize this account for posting photos analyzing the masculinity of random men by drawing green lines over them. If the man is leaning towards the woman, it's bad, it shows you're weak and clingy. And if the woman is leaning away, wow, how could you even call yourself a man? The ideal ratio, the Chad ratio if you will, is for the man to be either standing perfectly straight or to be leaning away from the woman, and for the woman to be leaning towards the man. This shows that the woman is dependent on the man and cares more about him than he cares about her, which is optimal apparently. I guess I should say this was one of my favorite Twitter accounts since they randomly blocked me. Daily reminder, your dick should also be pointing towards your girl's p for maximum masculine points, by the way. While this is definitely an extreme example, I think it's safe to say that men and how they carry their bodies are policed to an extreme extent. And it's not just men who do the policing. Just a few months ago, singer-songwriter Harry Styles was featured in a photo shoot wearing a dress, and it did not take long for him to receive a huge wave of controversy, most famously from conservative commentator Candace Owens. I know I mention this bitch in almost every video, but unlike most conservative commentators, she doesn't hide behind implications and memes to get her point across. She's just totally okay becoming completely unhinged from time to time.
Basically, if there is anything that looks remotely normal, The left sees it and they want to tear it down. They just cannot stand the idea that things are functioning and things are working and things are normal. And quite frankly, I do not find men in dresses to be attractive. Women do not find men in dresses to be attractive. Do not believe women that are sitting here telling you, oh, I would love for my man to wear a gown on our wedding day. It's just not true. When is the last time Hollywood has ever promoted anything good or anything functional? Quite frankly, from people who don't play the Hollywood game and live in the hills, if I see a man in a dress, I think he's a crackhead. Period. I would never allow my kids near a man that's wearing a dress.
Okay, so there's a lot happening there. So first off, she goes right in for the "it's bad because it's not what women really want" argument. Sorry, Candace, but I don't think Harry Styles threw on a dress because he was trying to make Niagara Falls look like a joke. He publicly said multiple times that he wears feminine clothing because he finds it fun to play with his style. I was gonna make a pun about his last name being Styles, but never mind. However, even if seducing Candace Owens wasn't on his agenda, men wearing dresses apparently are a danger to children, so that's a thing. I should also mention her tweets on the subject, which conclude with, "The East knows no society can function without strong men." I'm sorry, what? The East, as in the Middle East? You can't go from calling them all terrorists to thinking the Middle East is a haven of masculinity and domestic servitude, Candace. And the replies from conservative women are really something. I don't understand why this is so controversial. Men wearing dresses and acting feminine isn't attractive to a huge portion of women. Cut me down a tree and bring me the heart of a bear instead. I feel like replies like this really highlight how arbitrary masculinity really is. Ripping the vital organs out of wild animals, that is apparently what men need to do to be attractive. It seems nobody told me Jeff Bezos and the CEO of GoDaddy are our new sex symbols. The notion that Harry Styles is somehow failing at masculinity because he's unappealing to women is strange, considering he was the lead singer in an internationally successful band that was designed to appeal to young girls. And he still continues to have a career in music and a modeling career. He's definitely still attractive to hundreds of thousands of women, and the people making this argument know this. In her live stream, Candace Owens acknowledges that women claim to find Harry Styles attractive, but that they're only doing so because they're part of the woke mob.
It's just not true. That's just woke, leftist, feminist.
If your argument hinges on dismissing people's subjective preferences on what people find attractive, it's not actually an argument. I can do the same thing and claim Candace Owens is disgusting and a danger to children because she wears suits, and that any guy who finds her attractive is part of the conservative mob. The argument is impossible to refute because it's subjective, but dismisses all other subjective opinions. Not to mention the several times she relies on her audience to make her argument for her. She will say things like, "Since when has Hollywood supported anything good?" which sounds like an argument, but relies on the audience believing a specific thing, that Hollywood never argues for anything good. She will also say things like, "Since when has Hollywood promoted Christianity?" And since it's a question, she can't be fact-checked. Okay, so it seems masculinity is often policed by a man's relation to women, whether it's women claiming something is universally unattractive or men claiming to know what women really want. The thing is, men also have to contend with another factor, their relation to other men. While women are able to have close and intimate friendships with people of the same gender, men are not allowed to. While gay rights have progressed in this country at an incredible pace, homophobia still resides in our society in subtle ways, and probably will for decades to come. Looking gay is ultimately what drives the policing of masculinity from other men, and has ever since homosexuality went mainstream. When Candace Owens threw in that line about not wanting Harry Styles to be near her children, it's not because she found him unattractive, it's because she still relies on anti-gay stereotypes of feminine men preying on children. Look, we live in a society that equates manhood with heterosexuality. But first, I think we need to ask the question, what is homosexuality? In the eyes of your average Matthew working at CarMax, that is. Well, homosexuality is basically the antithesis of what it is to be a manly man. It's being emotional, expressive, sensitive, and feminine in every sense of the word. It's basically all the sexist stereotypes associated with womanhood without being feminine enough to be fetishized. Gay men are supposed to be the worst of both worlds in a flaccid male body with the emotional female temperament. So going back to social media and seeing posts comparing alphas to betas, you can see that line being drawn. You have competent, attractive, family-focused men, and you have delicate, overdramatic soy boys geeking out over a kid's toy. Years of messaging from advertising and media have told us that this is not how you're supposed to be a man. In TV shows, the punchline is often the gay characters and their complete failure at being men. This is how gay men are perceived, and the next generation of straight men are likely going to echo this same message, albeit a little watered down. Let's go back to what I said at the start of this video, that masculinity is a constant state of fear and preservation. With society shifting away from classic masculinity, it can seem more and more men are becoming effeminate, like it's spreading. So what's the fear? Well, it's that you'll become a flaming gay TV character, and so you fight to preserve your manhood. Being gay isn't considered something you are, it's considered something you risk becoming. So as a result, you have men avoiding anything that can remotely be deemed as gay, often purging their intimate friendships sometime during adolescence. If being vulnerable and expressive is being gay, they're going to do the opposite and be stoic and distant. Well, that's just how men are, you might say. But it wasn't always this way. If you go back to the Bible, you have men talking about their love for other men being greater than that of a woman. Damn, Jonathan must have been quite the bottom. It wasn't until the 1900s, when homosexuality became the new hot thing to call mental illness, that men started to give a shit. People grew suspicious of men who were too close to other men, and after several decades of that happening, it became basically impossible for men to be intimate with each other without risking their masculinity. It's interesting because if you applied today's standards to historic photos, your conclusion would be different. Oh god, they're cross-dressers, better hide the children! All jokes aside, internalized homophobia and sexism can take men down a rough path. When you have a group of people so on edge about themselves that they think their car's airbags are too feminine, some of them are bound to take it to a violent extreme. Beginning in the 1930s, the gay panic defense has been used to lessen the sentencing of men who assault or murder other men. The thought is, if you're the recipient of unwanted homosexual attention, it's justifiable you went into a state of temporary violent insanity and assaulted or murdered them. This defense is thankfully being banned in several states. In more recent times, men have received reduced sentencing for murdering transgender women after a sexual encounter, because the threat to their masculinity and the fear of being gay can supposedly diminish one's capacity for rational thought. As long as men remain obsessed with televising to the world that they haven't turned gay yet, we won't be able to fix this problem. Some way, somehow, we need to make sure men stop internalizing the fear of becoming gay, because it's not even possible to begin with. I think a start would be high-quality representation. While it's great we have openly gay characters in our media, we should probably also make sure they're not flaming gay stereotypes written and played by straight men. We totally should have male characters who are gay and feminine, but we also need representation of feminine straight actors who aren't used for comedy. And imagine how refreshing it would be to see a mainstream action hero who's openly gay, especially one that's marketed towards a younger, adolescent audience. Speaking of gay stuff, I think it's time I make this about me somehow. For those of you who don't know, I was raised in a Jehovah's Witness household, which is a small religion derived from Christianity. Now, many people have argued it's a cult, and I can see why. It took me until later in life to find out it's not normal to get banned from your religion for sinning. And now they produce children's shows about avoiding homosexuality. They have a whole process for banning people from practicing their religion, and it's definitely a bit insulated as far as religions go. I'm bringing this up to explain that I was raised in a traditional household, and unfortunately for me, I wasn't a very masculine or traditional child. I'd do things like put on my mother's high heels or sneak girl toys when nobody was paying attention, and this stuff was drilled out of me. Whenever I wanted something more feminine, it was made expressly clear that despite what toys I could get my mother to buy me, these were in fact very gay things to be doing. Little did they know! By the time I was entering adulthood, I wanted to be masculine desperately. I was straining my voice into a deeper register. I was doing that thing with my tongue that alpha gurus say is supposed to change your jawline. I spent hours researching gay vocal patterns trying to figure out how to get rid of my gay accent. I even started slowly saving for plastic surgery, though I came to the conclusion my skull shape was too feminine and there's no fixing that. The thing is, while straight men can end up in this situation, I had the whole gay thing to deal with too. And just like how straight men police each other's masculinity in the name of female attraction, gay men do the same thing. Finally, something in my realm. I spent this whole video putting up with straight shit, mentioning almost nothing about the gay community, even though toxic masculinity in the gay community is far more fascinating, at least to degenerates like me. Anyway, despite having a signature twink glow, I was still subject to the rampant toxic masculinity in the gay community. Grindr was really becoming a thing at this point, and it was my first dating app. The only attention I got was from 60-year-old tops who wanted someone who was barely legal, and they wouldn't even pay me for it, so what's the point? Meanwhile, I could watch 6-foot-tall, chiseled alpha males who weren't even much older than me get flooded with attention from hundreds of people who looked about as feminine as I did. I quickly came to the realization that being gay often isn't about attraction to men, it's attraction to masculinity. I think for so many gay men, they place society's image of masculinity on a pedestal because they've been denied that brand of masculinity for their entire life. I think we also internalize what women want in a man, and since we're told that gay men are basically women, we recreate the same gender dynamics. In a way, you get to experience both gender roles as a gay man, but instead of your role being determined by your gender, it's determined by your masculinity. If you look like a lumberjack, you get to be pursued by countless men, like a straight woman would be. But you also get to be the dominant one. But if you're built like, well, like me for example, you're supposed to initiate every interaction while also being very submissive. This is obviously really imbalanced. At least if you're a straight trad wife, you get to be the sexual selector, the one who is in demand by countless men. I didn't even get to have that going for me. This fueled my desire to be masculine that much more, especially while dating. It wasn't until I settled down with someone long term that I was able to free myself of masculinity policing. And I'm one of the lucky ones. I ended up with a guy who literally spent last summer chopping down trees. I'm basically living the fantasy endgame of homosexuality. Dating a masculine man who doesn't pressure me to be a certain tribe or position, that's the dream. But for many people, even being in a stable and loving relationship, it isn't enough to calm down internalized policing. There are stories of gay men in relationships dying from illegal injections of construction-grade silicone. Injections done in a desperate attempt to look more muscular and masculine. Which is crazy because some of these men already look like the type that's most desirable in the gay world. That very well could have been me if I continued down the path I was heading, and it's not like I managed to get out of it either. For a long time, I wanted to start wearing foundation. After the severe skin issues I had as a teenager, I always liked the idea of covering it up and making my skin look perfect. I can still remember the enormous amount of willpower it took for me to enter the makeup aisle at Target and grab something. I'd hover near the aisle, but then some girl'd walk in as if she owns the place and start looking at brushes or something. Like, move over, Jennifer, I'm trying to be gay here. It took several trips to the store over a few weeks before I actually bought anything. And even then, I remember buying the cheapest shirt I could find in the store because I felt the need to wrap it in something on my way to self-checkout. I can't begin to imagine what else I'd be doing right now if I wasn't so scared of looking gay. I'd probably be a full-blown drag queen at this point. You never know, the sky's the limit. Hopefully the straight men in the audience don't write this video off because I revealed I'm not one of them. I used to live your lifestyle. I know what you get up to. This video is getting extremely long though, so let's jump to the next pretentious chapter. Men have a tendency to over-rationalize things. They like categories and boxes to put people in. It's not working out, it's looks maxing. It's not preferences, it's a socio-sexual hierarchy. The thing is, these categories aren't based on anything that's real. The concept of an alpha male originates from a study about pack behavior in wolves. This study was later disavowed by the scientist who made it once he realized his findings weren't accurate or reproducible. So if we have no scientific data supporting the existence of alpha males, why are we basing our vocabulary, body language, speech cadence, and plastic surgery choices over a failed research project? Well, it's because it's what women want. They want a strong, chiseled man, you might say. Well, beauty standards haven't always been this way. For a long time, I was attracted to be overweight because it was a sign of wealth and abundance. And you could say the same thing about today's washboard abs. You have to be somewhat privileged or in a privileged position to have a body that looks like that. But society needs strong men. Well, I don't really think so, at least not physical strength. Nowadays, wars are fought with drones or technology, and the job market is seeing most of its growth in positions that require intellectual strength rather than physical strength. We don't need to defend this country from foreign invasions with brute force anymore. We have technology. And I'm not saying being physically strong is bad. If we don't have any strong men, my Instagram feed is going to be completely devoid of thirst traps, and we can't have that. What I'm saying is there is a reason these alpha gurus have to make up scenarios where these traits are useful. They'll say something like, who do you think a girl would want in a zombie apocalypse? And like, sure, I'll call you up next time I need protection from all the zombies. I used to be one of those people who would make up strange scenarios where I needed to be hitting the gym all the time and eating nothing but raw chicken. I'd say things to myself like, well, what if I get mugged at knife point or I need to protect myself in a conflict? Well, it would be far more useful to take self-defense classes, so if it really was about protection, take one of those first. If you're stuck in this mindset, try to give it some thought. Are your reasons for doing something really what you think they are? And are there more efficient ways to do that thing that don't involve feeding mental illness? Oftentimes, it's not about defense or attracting women, it's about feeding the temptation of body dysmorphia and avoiding deep-rooted psychological issues. But that's just self-policing. What about policing of other men? Well, it really comes down to internalized homophobia in a sense of, if I'm struggling, you should too. I've noticed Americans really struggle with the concept of fairness. If we struggle with something, we want to inflict that struggle on other people. The same thing happens with student loans. When anyone says we should cancel student debt, you have some guy in the comments named Steve saying, but what about the people who paid theirs off already? What about them, Steven? They probably went to school 45 years ago and it cost a few Chuck E. Cheese tokens. I'm not much different though. When I see men fail to adhere to these standards I place on myself, it sets something off deep within me. There was one picture that did this for me especially. It was some guy who posted to the official Soylent subreddit about how their hand was too fragile to open a bottle, so they bought a special device to open their Soylent bottles. The nerve some people have to not be miserable like the rest of us. I think this reaction comes from seeing a part of myself in someone else. And so I project all the uncertainties and self-hatred I have onto other people. It takes a certain type of oblivious masculinity oversight to evoke this negative response out of me. Probably because I have so many anxieties about being perceived like a gay TV character, completely failing at being a functioning adult male while not knowing. I think another issue in our society is how we've come to the conclusion that the pursuit of traditional masculinity is toxic, and then don't replace that with anything. What we need is a role model for what masculinity should be in the current century. Since we no longer need an endless supply of beefy lumberjack daddies for society to function, maybe we can ease up on that a bit. I'm not saying we need to demonize masculine men, but rather redefine what masculinity can be, make it less restrictive. I think women manage to do this for themselves, at least to some extent. Women are generally allowed to have intimate friendships without risking their femininity, which is likely why they have lower depression and suicide rates. That change didn't require forcing them to be less feminine, but rather allowing women to live healthier, less restricted lives in our culture. And even letting them wear suits. Oh god, the horror! Most men know their current gender role isn't working for them and putting them under an immense amount of pressure. Now all we need to do is agree on a solution. And I can tell you this. Doubling down on 1950s gender roles in a world that is a lot different than it was in the 50s is not a solution. Hi, so I'm filming in my car because I have nowhere else I can possibly film, and I'm filming on my phone, so we're just working with what we got here. So the video you just watched was more than a year old. It was edited more than a year ago. It was entirely created more than a year ago. And it was going to be longer than it ended up being. What happened was I noticed that myself and also my spouse, we were both having some respiratory issues. And we were both working in that barn where I was filming all of these Finding Subtext videos a lot. I was filming, these videos for this new YouTube channel that I was really working hard on. and my spouse was doing like woodworking and other like hobbies in the same space. It was a barn on some family property that I no longer have access to anyways, but what happened was we were having some respiratory issues, and we found out that there was 30,000 times the safe limit of airborne carcinogens in that barn. It was due to some poorly mixed chemicals from someone else who had access to the property, and we didn't know. So what happened was basically, while I was in the middle of trying to launch this channel, we could no longer enter that place. And outside of where I was filming, my spouse and I are having a lot of housing insecurity, a lot of financial issues, a lot of life stuff happening. So there was no way I could work on this channel without access to a space to film that I didn't have to pay for. Thankfully, something that's changed a lot recently is we are moving. And not only are we moving, but we are moving into a space that is much larger, has a garage, has room and space. I haven't lived in anything bigger than 400 square feet in my entire adult life. So yeah, this channel is going to be basically revived. I had to, walk away from it for about a year, and that was because of the access to the filming location, but also because I was going through a lot of issues in life, and it's kind of all behind me now. So I will be relaunching this channel. I just wanted to put this video out there because it was like 80% done, and I'm just kind of throwing it up as is so you guys have something to watch in the meantime. But I've currently have about 3 scripts that I'm ready to film once we move into the new place. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I apologize if there's any editing, sound, filming, quality issues, etc. It was produced really quickly and also was never finished, but I still wanted to release it because it was almost done. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. You'll see me very soon with new content that is much better than what I started the channel with. And yeah, thanks for sticking by me, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.